Hey guys, and welcome to Nuance. I'm the host. I guess I'm a host. Anyways, my videos are about adding some interesting nuance and value to topics around the world. And because I live in China, I kind of have some basis on commenting on issues related to China. One of the things that bugs me the most about China, you guys talk about me having always a positive view of China. I do try to add nuance to certain things, but there are some issues that I have a pretty strong feeling about in the negative. I'm actually in a city called Qinzhou, and I'm walking through an oyster farm. And China is really trying to expand their cultivation of oysters. It's becoming somewhat of a more popular dish. And oh my gosh, oysters, it's almost like the perfect organism, because when you grow oysters, they provide you with a food source, they provide people with a job, but they also provide filtration to the water. It's one of the few organisms that, as it grows, it improves its surrounding. You can't say that about pigs or cows or corn or almost anything else. It either requires some fertilizer, which gives you abnormal amounts of nitrogen or some harmful chemicals, or the waste from the animals have to be disposed of, and there's a lot of pollution. With regards to aquaculture and raising fish and seafood, that's a huge problem here in China. Really, really big and disastrous problem. We have, as stewards of this earth, we have a responsibility to care for the environment. And if you haven't heard, there are many stories of a pillaging, you would say, of the ocean environment. And in a lot of cases, it's this country that is the culprit. I think there's a story out there about large, massive flotillas, basically floating cities that are out there in all parts of the world, fishing to their heart's content, and collecting basically any organism they can find to bring it back here to China to feed their population. It's a real big problem. But you also have to think about the nuance behind it, because there's all sorts of factors that I think people ignore when they consider this problem. China is a huge country, first of all. They're a country of 1.4 billion people. That's 1.4 billion mouths that are looking to be fed. That is not to excuse the way in which we cultivate our food, but it is a factor that we need to understand. A lot of countries can't appreciate the number of mouths that you have to feed in this country, and also what type of food these people appreciate. Seafood is a staple for, I would have to say, the majority of Chinese. Even the Chinese that live inland have migrated more to the coast, and the coast is where the largest population centers of China are pretty much centered. And so you have a huge amount of people that make seafood part of their diet. And so you have to find that food somewhere, that food source. Now, obviously, oysters, if everybody could just feast on oysters, then we could alleviate that problem pretty quick. Oysters clean the environment. They don't really even have much of a nervous system, and you can pretty much eat them to your heart's content. Obviously, I think there's some heavy metals and issues there, but you can't just eat oysters. You've got to eat some different things. And so there's these huge flotillas, and they're going off, and they are destroying the environment. It's frustrating, because I appreciate this country for many things, but I also have to understand that there's a lot that needs to be done for a population so big to take care of their habits and their appetites. So these flotillas are going off, and they're traveling far, far outside of their Chinese territorial waters, halfway across the earth, and they actually have these main ships, these hub ships, that little ships are going off. And when I say little ships, even the little ships are pretty huge, and they're going off and they are fishing to gather food. And the bycatch in those fishing flotillas, from what I've told and what I've seen, is pretty horrific. Bycatch, if you don't know, is the fish that get caught in the nets that aren't the subject that they're looking for. So if they're looking for like some sort of yellowtail, they might cast the nets and catch all sorts of other things, from from dolphins to sharks to all sorts of different creatures. And I don't know, if you only looked at it from the perspective of what they're doing, there's not a lot of justification for it. But when you look at it as the bigger picture to see what they're trying to do to feed their populace and how much they have to catch in order to feed the appetites of all of their people, you kind of can see the problem there. There are so many issues with regards to a population as large as China's that a lot of people don't consider. Now, that's not to say that I approve of what they're doing. There are other options with regards to aquaculture, like these oysters are one of them, but oysters can only supplement a small portion of the food that are eaten by Chinese. Now, Chinese people also raise cattle and pigs and have the same problems that exist in all countries. As a matter of fact, I think you would see similar problems in other countries. Let's not kid ourselves to say that China is the only country that's doing this. If America had the population of China, and that's a really, really important fact. I think people don't understand, especially, because you can't appreciate the size of this country, is that America, if it had 3 times the amount of mouths to feed, think of the impact that would be on their food cultivation systems. Already, if you look, you can see that pig farming and cow grazing and corn cultivation and agriculture have a huge footprint in America and create huge problems with regards to fertilizer and food waste and the animal waste. In any one of these countries, I think it's important to multiply your country's problems by whatever ratio is equal to China. America has about 1/3, but other countries that are equally castigating China for the problems that they have might have 1/10 or 1/20 the population size of China. And just think of what they would have to go through if they were housing 1.4 billion people. So let's make sure to quantify the problem before casting blame and trying to understand the issue. Now, I'm not apologizing for China. No, not in any way. In fact, I wish we could distance ourselves from a lot of different food sources that have a horrible impact on our global ecosystem. I mean, obviously, it would be nice if we didn't impact it adversely at all. And China is trying to do some things with regards to controlling and doing better. I mean, this isn't related to food service, but if you look at the coal power plants in the way that they generate power, a lot of people cast a lot of blame on China because they're one of the largest producers or largest users of coal power plants. You can say that in the same breath that you can understand that China is also the factory of the world. And so in order to run the factory that make the products that everybody in the world buys, you have to have power to power those factories. And a lot of people might not really appreciate that. It's a very, very important factor to understand the greater problem that we have as a race with regards to fisheries and food service and sustainability in our oceans. I almost think that's a worse problem than coal in many cases, because once you decimate a population, you might never be able to get that population back. And so I think China does have a responsibility to try to control and diversify and limit the amount of fish that they take from the sea, it's going to take a huge mobility and a huge change in perception, because people are very accustomed to eating seafood, and they have done so for thousands of years. And suddenly we have to go ahead and make some really solid cultural changes in order to guide society in a better direction. But let's not say that China has done nothing. China has done things. A lot like the coal-fired power plants in China, they're also a leader in renewable energies. Wind power and solar panels are ubiquitous in China. So as much as they have a part of the cause of the problem, they're also a major mover and shaker in not only putting and installing solar and wind and renewable energy in the country, but also exporting it as manufacturers of solar panels and wind turbines. So that's also a factor you have to look at when you're judging based on a certain problem. China has done some things with regards to their own marine sustainability to try to make sure that they don't collapse entire ecosystems. As a matter of fact, the Yangtze River is shut down for commercial fishing for 10 full years. This is a huge deal. The Yangtze River is a major tributary inside China. It provided in history a lot of food for the country, and China made the tough call to cut off fishing throughout the Yangtze for 10 years to allow the ecosystem to come back. This gives me some hope that China can do some similar things with regards to the ocean ecosystem, and their flotillas traveling the world and fishing waters around Galapagos and different places. Chinese are also industrious too, and that can be a double-edged sword. In a lot of cases, instead of having some local fishermen go out and fish a little bit, you have these massive, like I said, flotillas going out there and just cultivating as much as possible. And you know, in some ways you see ingenuity in the methods for doing it, but sometimes ingenuity is almost too efficient, and you end up running into problems with the fact that they can go out there and they can really take too much from our ocean's ecosystem. So I don't know, you know, it's a difficult problem to manage, and we only have one Earth, and all the organisms, especially out here on the ocean, they're not infinite, and we have a responsibility to them. So a lot of people on Nuance ask me, you know, they say, oh, everything that you say is positive about China. Well, there are a lot of positive things about China, but I do have to admit that this problem is one of probably my most castigating problems. I cannot find too many ways to spin this problem into a positive. It's simply a call out to the world to try to be better stewards. And when I say the world, I do mean the world. I mean, the problem of overfishing is not just a China problem. Southeast Asia in particular, there's shrimp fishing in Thailand. There's America's fisheries as well, which are stretched to the limit. It is a global problem, and we need to fix it as a global society. I enjoy seafood, you know, I like to eat seafood, so I'm as guilty as anybody. And it's a difficult problem to have, because I do enjoy eating food from the sea, but we all have to understand where that food comes from. Like being here and shooting some video of eating oysters and understanding the cultivation of the oysters gave me an appreciation of oysters. And just like doing scuba diving, which I've been doing for the past, well, I've been doing it for decades, but I've been doing it recently here in Sanya and replanting coral. Getting out and actually seeing nature and understanding our impact on it in a very matter-of-fact, like very vivid way is one way that we can understand our environment and appreciate it. Because if you're sitting there and you're eating seafood every day, but you don't appreciate what it took to get that seafood on your plate and where that seafood might have come from, is a problem. I think that globally, as society has advanced so far, we're not hunters and gatherers anymore. So those of us who are hunters or gatherers are gathering all of this food and sending it to people who can't appreciate where it's come from. So I don't know. It's a big problem. I don't have the solution. I have seen China make a few steps to try to get a handle on their massive appetite with regards to the ocean environment, but they still have a long, long way to go. Anyways, leave your comments below. Let me know if you've thought about this. Let me know if you agree with what I say. Let me know if you think of any solutions. Is there any thoughts on this that is a sustainable solution? Because you can even farm salmon in pens, but that only lasts so long, and it's also very polluting. You can, you can do estuaries like this where you're growing oysters and mollusks and different types of bivalves, and that's good too. But we're talking 1 billion mouths to feed, and I think that's a very important factor in order to understand the greater picture. Anyways, thanks guys. I hope this added a little nuance to the conversation. It is a big problem. It is something we need to get a handle on. And we need to do it before it's too late, before we run out of time and the entire ocean ecosystem collapses under the weight of our ravenous appetites. Thanks again. Have a good one. Hope I added a little nuance to the conversation.